What's up guys, welcome to another tech video that is going to primarily focus around photography. I'm lumping this one in with the Q&A video today because of the fact that I figured that video is going to be pretty long and this one's going to be pretty short, so why not put them both together? And today we're talking about a lens, and it's a lens that I didn't think would be super interesting, but turns out to actually be really interesting. So today we're talking about the Photasee f1.7 35mm. Back when I bought it, it was literally $1 per millimeter. So let's get started. So like I said, this is a lens that I wasn't really anticipating being super interesting. I saw it and figured, well, it's got really good reviews, I'll buy it. And I bought it on a whim because, well, $35 for a 35mm. Now it's $29. That's a pretty good steal. I've seen 35mm lenses from Canon directly, or from Sony, or from Sigma that'll go for $300, $400, $500 or more. And this one was obviously extremely cheap. So what made it so cheap? Yeah, we're starting out with what made it cheap because those are pretty much the things you'll notice first. And the main thing is it is 100% manual. Manual focus, manual aperture, no auto anything, doesn't talk to the camera, nothing like that. But what is nice is for video, it does have a declicked aperture similar to the Camlin 50mm that I talked about a while back. And so you can actually just spin it pretty much all the way from one point to another, and even get little tiny changes in between f-stops. So instead of f1.7 to f2, you could do f8 or 1.8 or 1.9 to f2, and it's just kind of nice for video. It's manual focus, and it goes from 0.3 meters to infinity, though it's not very well spaced between each of them, so that is kind of weird, and it takes a bit of time to figure out the focus and get it just right. Now, something else that takes a little while to get used to is, well, actually shooting on the lens, because this lens is extremely weird in one very specific way that some people might like, some people may dislike. For artsy stuff, I love it. So this lens has a very odd vignetting or blurring around the edges that's kind of hard to explain. I'll show some pictures of it. So you can see this picture of the grass. The background sort of has this circular arc to it. Same thing with this photo here, and even in this photo, which my girlfriend took, so thank you for that, Harley. But in this photo, you can see that my face is in focus, but if you look down at my shoes, it's not, and the background is very swirly in the way that it's blurred. They're making a ton of noise upstairs, holy crap. Now, some less expensive lenses will normally do this, like the 50mm kit lens that came with the Pentax K1000, because they're just, well, they're less expensive lenses, and they're not designed to be sharp edge to edge. They're designed to be affordable while still getting pretty good images. And I noticed that with a couple of my photos when I used the Pentax. The 50mm does fall off and round at the edges, but it's not terrible. This, on the other hand, if you don't know what you're doing, can really ruin a shot. It almost feels like the center of the lens and the edges of the lens are actually focusing separately from one another, not that they're just falling off at the edges, because you can pull focus towards the center and the edges will blur out entirely, but you can also focus towards the edges and the center will fall out entirely, but you can get the edges to be in focus. It's the weirdest artifacting and weirdest thing about this lens. Now, for those of you who've watched pretty much any of my videos, I normally shoot on a 50mm lens. It's a Mamiya Secor lens from the early to mid 70s, and it's on an adapter attached to my Sony. I'm not doing that right now because my Sony's out for repair. That's a whole other story, but I like that lens because the background blur is imperfect. It's sort of swirly. It's got this interesting look. I took this portrait to kind of, well, obviously take a portrait, but also to give this example. You can see the lights behind me coming through the trees are not a perfect circle like a lot of lenses. I'll give you an example of what I mean by perfect circles for bokeh. So I put my iPhone back there with the flash on, and you can see that it's pretty much a perfect circle, and that's because this lens is designed to be essentially as beautiful and blurred background perfect as possible. Now, older hand-polished lenses were not like that. You get this imperfection near the edges because they only really needed to care about what was perfectly in focus. Now, I don't actually know the history of this lens or what actually was involved in making it. I just know that it's cheap, so chances are they didn't really care about having super tight tolerances for things like the background blur. Now, whether or not background blur coming into the frame is a problem or not, that's a different discussion, but it does give a very unique look. And I've tried to use it for video, and the only times it really works is up close. And when I say up close, I mean as close as the focus can go, because that's the only point that it seems to not have any sort of color fringing. And when you actually shoot wide open, there's no escaping that weird edge blur. Now, when you stop it down, you go to f2, 2.8, any of the apertures basically below f1.8 or 1.7, that blur pretty much goes away entirely, which is extremely convenient because I would hate to have to use that all the time. You can see here in the shot that as I change the aperture, yeah, obviously the camera is having to compensate the brightness, but the blur around the edges goes away pretty dramatically. This is good if you're shooting outdoors because a lot of your shots will pretty much be normal. It's not going to be a big issue, and this is because you're taking the edges that are affecting it when it's wide open and basically getting rid of them by closing the aperture. I'm getting way too technical about this lens. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because it is one of the lenses that I've been using fairly frequently when I go out and take just general photos alongside the 50mm that I mentioned earlier, and I figured I hadn't really talked about it too much, and it gets very positive reviews on Amazon, one from myself included, and I figured that I'd make a video talking about why, and well, here's why. It's unique. Who would have thought? It's unique and cheap. And while I'm not going to beat around the bush to kind of say, oh, well, it's cheap, but no, it's cheap. I'm not going to beat around the bush. But here's the thing. It's, like I said, unique. So if you want to get this very sort of different perspective, different look to your photo, that the more people buy this will become less unique. But if you want to have that different look with a very interesting blur, which you can play with quite a bit. I mean, look at this up close I did. The berries in the background just like exploded into blur. It's really weird. Or this door. It is perfect for accentuating central focus points. And that's why I like it. Close up for portraits, it's awesome. For kind of pulling your subject away from whatever's around it, it's perfect. And the rest of the lens is clear enough, and the colors coming through it don't fringe too terribly as long as you're not too close. So yeah, this is why I figured I'd bring this lens up, because I've talked about the 50mm that I shoot on and the other weird 50mm that I said is from the 70s. I'll probably make a video about that at some point, or maybe just an entire video about the gear I use. So leave a comment down below or a like if you guys think that I should do that, because I would definitely love to talk about my gear and sort of nerd out. But yeah, this is just one of those weird cameras that I bought on a whim and ended up being an extremely interesting piece of equipment. And like I said, and as you saw in the photos, it just has this look about it that you don't get with a lot of other lenses. So I'll leave a link to the lens that I'm talking about, this lens specifically, down in the description, so you can go and check the lens out on Amazon. I can't guarantee it's going to ship very quickly, nor can I guarantee that it's going to stay on that price that I mentioned earlier, but either way, it's definitely a really cool lens. It is right now only for Sony E mount and C mounts, so, and I think you can get it as like a just detached lens as well, so take a look. If you guys actually want to get into that, it's definitely worthwhile. If you got a Sony, you would be behooved to put this in your camera bag, because if you really want to get some cool shots, this will do it for you. And it's kind of good at low light. They mention it as a low light monster, but it's, yeah, an open aperture does not always mean low light monster. It can also mean really, really difficult to accommodate for in low light. So yeah, it could, but considering the barrel of this lens is so tiny, it still doesn't let a whole lot of light in. But either way, guys, that's been it. Like I said, I'll leave a link to this lens in the description down below. Go check it out. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think if you've got a Sony, you might go check this out and pick it up? Do you not care? Do you want to just kind of, you know, do something else? A lot of times when I do these camera videos, maybe they get traction, maybe they don't. So I guess we'll see. But either way, guys, thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to be there, and have a good one. In case you guys missed it in every other video that I make and every ending card that I've ever made, I do make shirts, and I've actually got quite a few really cool designs and even more coming out pretty soon. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you guys check out a shirt. I'll be running some specials pretty soon, so if you want to wait, that's fine, because I'll be running some specials to save you some money. But otherwise, if you're into anime, you're into supporting a reviewer and that kind of stuff, and you're into cameras and whatever else, go check it out.